This is 914 Wired. We're back, Peter.
Welcome, everybody, to 914 Wired. We are a podcast in Westchester County. Charlie Stern is running the show now. He's the engineer. He is one of the three founders, along with Ardina Seward and myself. Ardina's background is in television news. She was on the other side of the camera, but she could have been on the side of the camera where we looked at her. She chose to be the first African-American camera woman to ever work for a television network in the history of the United States. I was a New York Post reporter, and then I worked for Channel 9 as an investigative producer and political producer. And we have with us today Tami Wilson, who is the CEO of Feeding Westchester, an organization that's been around since 1988, I believe, and has impacted people who have food issues in Westchester County. Tami, I have to tell you, I went to your Elmsford location several times. I was there when I was a New York Post reporter. I was there when I was with Channel 9, probably around Thanksgiving. And when my daughter was in her last year of Hebrew school, the bat mitzvah year, I took she and three of her friends to Feeding Westchester in order for them to pack things up so they could go out to the people who need your services. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And I respectfully, I appreciate you promoting me to CEO, but I'm actually the first COO of Feeding Westchester.
Who cares? It's all the same.
No, please don't tell my boss. But no, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. And yes,
can we have a brief history of Feeding Westchester? I remember the woman who founded it, but I don't remember her name or her previous affiliation before starting the organization.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I didn't hear you.
The person who founded your organization.
Oh,
do you know much about her?
Joe Masterson is my understanding that Feeding Westchester started with a man and a van, who was in 1988 recognized food insecurity within this county and decided to, do something about it. And then Feeding Westchester in about 1990 decided to go under Feeding America, which provides support to over 200 food banks across the country. So that's kind of how we got our start.
There have been women, though, who headed the organization
absolutely.
Near the outset. Yes.
Absolutely. So currently our president and CEO is Karen Aaron, and we've had women.
We can't hear you.
No, you just dropped off there at the very end.
So, Ardina, you want to start with the questions?
Yes. You try and equate Westchester with people who have food insecurity. I mean, we all know that Westchester is a county that's affluent. How many people need the services of your organization in Westchester County?
Sure. So to paint the picture, think of it as 1 in 3 households in Westchester County need our assistance. So the federal poverty rate is about 26,000.
1 in 3?
1 in 3. Take that in. 1 in 3.
Okay. So there's almost 1 million people in Westchester, 970,000.
Over 300,000.
You're saying 300,000 people experience food insecurity in Westchester.
1 in 3 household, and we see about 220,000. We have 220,000 neighborhood visits a month on average.
That is staggering. Average. It is staggering, and it's much more than I thought.
Yes.
Who are they?
They're your neighbors in Westchester County. They're throughout. They are full-time. There are full-time workers. There are people with either, I would say, mid-range jobs, a minimum wage. It's your average person, right? So to paint the picture so that you can better understand, the federal poverty is about 26,000 for a family of 2 adults and 2 children, right? That's considered the federal poverty level. But in Westchester County, in order to make it with that same family, it's $94,000 just to make it. And so if you are a full-time employee making minimum wage and you have 2 parents who are doing that, that's only $60,000. You're still short $34,000 just to make it. And these are bare necessities with rent, food, childcare, internet, cell phone. So the need is definitely great, and it's 1 in 3 households. It's staggering.
So So we've all here used this term food insecurity. Can you step us through the spectrum of food insecurity? Because it's like it's not just people starving, it's
Mhm.
people that maybe can afford 10 meals a week, but there's 7 days and they need 20 meals a week. So where are this 200,000 people on that range?
Right. So food insecurity can be, I mean, anyone with like, I mean, even just two parents or even like a couple, right? So that could be someone who has a full-time job and they're just not meeting the exact need that they can monthly for food, right? So you have groceries. Groceries right now, myself as a parent, I could spend $350 a week on those kids because they like to eat, right? They eat a
Right,
lot. I got teenagers
right.
and things, and there's a gap there, right? So there's a meal gap. So food insecurity, you have to think of it as, let's say, a senior who has to decide on whether or not their Social Security or their SNAP benefits can pull them through the month, or do they decide between food and medication? You have veterans, like everyone is pretty much, I would say, at some point in time, you get on a fixed income when you have to make decisions about whether do I get nutritious food or do I get medicine? Do I get nutritious food or do I pay the rent? Do I pay my utilities? So it's a lot more than what people think, especially considering that Westchester is an affluent community.
So
No, it's not one. That's the thing about Westchester. It's not one
it's
community.
not one thing.
There are 5 or 6 cities in Westchester, and I would imagine that a fair number of the people who are food deprived live in those cities,
You'll be
percentage
very
wise.
You'll be very surprised. So ideally, well, not ideally, but I would say for now, our highest unmet need neighborhoods reside within southern Westchester. So you have Yonkers, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, but you also have Peekskill. You also have northern Westchester County, right? And
Well,
you also
Peekskill is
even
Peekskill is a city, so yeah, that's
right,
why I included that. Yes.
right, and even in places like North Castle, the need may be smaller, but there's also different constraints. You have constraints of transportation, right? Maybe
Yeah.
I don't have a car to get to my local pantry. Maybe I have to walk. And if I'm walking, how far am I walking? How long am I standing on that line to get the food, which is really emergency food? It's not something that could sustain families throughout the entire year. I
And
mean,
that's
excuse me,
part
the
of
entire
that's
week.
part of that that's part of the entire problem with poverty in Westchester County. When these municipalities create affordable housing, oftentimes they put it in parts of their communities where there are no goods and services people can walk to. So you can put up a 40-unit housing complex in, I don't know, some community in northern Westchester, and the people who live there, if they don't have a car, how are they supposed to get their needs met?
So that
And that's
brings me.
part of the whole gestalt of issues confronting people who don't have a lot of money in Westchester County.
It's the whole thing. So Tammy, how does Feeding Westchester
Deal with all that.
operationalize this need? I understand you have a unit in Elmsford. Is it a central distribution point? Is it a place where people actually go and receive food? Can you eat there? How does it work?
So Feeding Westchester in Elmsford, this is our main distribution center. So we're about almost 40,000 square feet. But what is great about us is that we have amazing partners. We have nearly 300 partners within the community that include schools, pantries, hospitals, shelters, churches, synagogues. We have a number of partners. So what we do is we are the source for, like, we have a lot of government food, and we also have donated food, and we work with our amazing partners to distribute this food out to people. Now, our neighbors, to your point, sometimes they're spread out. We also have our mobile food pantry, and our mobile food pantry is a market on wheels, right? So what we do is we take a 26-foot truck, we go out into the community, and we go out and we try to identify communities that do not have one of our wonderful partners there so that we can fill that gap.
How has this changed with the undocumented population?
I don't think anything really has changed. We just see an increase in numbers. We accept anyone who is in need. And what we do is we take the information as far as how many people are in your household, and then we're providing emergency pantry bags depending on the number of people in your household. I think for us, though, we only give about, let's say, 3 days worth within a month, right? Let's say 3 days for up to a family of 4. But if you do the math, and currently we're at 21 million pounds this past fiscal year, we hit about 21 million pounds and we doubled in the last 3 years. But in order to fill the gap, to really fill the gap, we would have to be a $35 million organization. So we're only giving a small piece of it, of the food for those that are in need. But we do our best. And again, we have amazing partners that really support. Like, some of these partners are unpaid staff, volunteers only, work every single day.
When you talk
Yes.
about partners, are you talking about the food pantries for whom you are a supplier, or are you talking about the restaurants, the food distributors, the farmers? I don't know, but
No.
like, which side of the supply chain are you talking about? Both?
So when I'm referencing partners, our main partners that do the day-to-day work, those are the schools, the pantries, the soup kitchens. Those are our partners. But to your point, we have other partners. So we work very closely with our retail recovery program. So we're working with retailers across the county. So Stop and Shop, Targets, BJ's, Costco. We have a number of different organizations that have been really supportive of Feeding Westchester, our partners, and the mission to fight food insecurity.
Has Wegmans gotten involved in that?
Yes, Wegmans is a national partner, but yes, they are absolutely.
So tell me how that works. You have a 40,000 square foot spot in Elmsford where I gather you're packaging these meals, but if a person can only get 3 days worth of food a month, what are they doing the other 27 days?
So oftentimes our neighbors are relying on SNAP. So SNAP benefits are very important. We are focusing on the farm bill that oftentimes threatens the cut of SNAP benefits. We want to increase them. So what Feeding Westchester and our partners do is we are a supplement. SNAP should really be holding people as best as possible. So between donations and the government food that we receive, it's a supplement to SNAP. And it's, oftentimes we find that our neighbors are going to multiple pantries. So they may go.
We can't hear you.
Hang on, you dropped out there for a second.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Often.
We'll fix that. We'll fix that up. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so they may often go to one pantry in one location, but in the same day, in the same week, go to another location and pantry. So oftentimes people are resourceful, they're creative, they want to be able to get what they need. And so sometimes they'll go to multiple pantry distributions in order to get the food that they need if SNAP doesn't provide everything that they need.
Sounds like a full-time job for some people.
Well, if you're hungry,
do anything
I
you
don't
can.
know how there could be a bigger priority. I mean,
It is.
I'm a child of privilege, and I always had a refrigerator full of food. This is maybe not the case for everybody. So if there's 220,000 people in Westchester accessing services, this is very serious. That means that there must be, in that 220,000, elderly people who have jobs, students. I mean, it must be people from all walks of life. I mean, who actually accesses the facility in Elmsford? Is it a walk-in kind of place, or how does it work?
So our facility in Elmsford is just a distribution center. We come in, we have because we've recently expanded, we've doubled our storage. We were at 125% capacity, so we've added an additional 12,000 square feet. But this isn't a place where you would come to get an emergency bag. This is where we load up our trucks. All of our workers and staff load up trucks. We receive product here. We have volunteers that come to our location that sort through things. So we have a lot of our retail recovery program. We get a lot of items from, like I said, Target, the Wegmans, Stop and Shop. And we have daily volunteers that come in and sort through this, prepackage it so that we can go and send it back out to our partners.
Do you get any funding from the federal, state, or local or county governments?
We do. We have a variety of ways in which we get food and or donations. So our federal programming is TFAP, which is the Emergency Food and Nutrition Program. And we also get food from the state, which is HIPNAP, a lot of naps. But yes, we get food from both federal, state, and county as well. And then also within local municipalities as well.
And a NAP is a nutrition assistance program.
You got it.
Okay. And while we're on
I
that
thought a
topic,
nap was a short sleep.
well, it's a different thing.
Okay.
While we're on the
Now,
topic
we cannot
of
sleep on food insecurity.
No.
I'll bet. So while we're talking about your organization, please mention if somebody wants to be a volunteer, what opportunities there are, how
And
to
an
get
email
how to get in
address.
touch, an
Yeah.
email or web address, and then of course the second question is going to be if somebody wants to make a contribution, what can you offer them?
Sure. So I would direct everyone to go to feedingwestchester.org. That's where we would have our volunteer opportunities that you can volunteer all year around. The need is great outside of just our Thanksgiving and Christmas season and our holiday season. But definitely Feeding Westchester, where you want to donate, where you want to just give your time, where you want to learn more information about the programs that we offer. We are open and ready and willing to take any type of volunteers. Just everything is needed. Everything is wanted.
Regina.
How have the churches gotten involved with that? Because at one point, the churches were sort of one of the primary sources of food giveaways. Is that still ongoing?
Yes. So a lot of our partners are those affiliated with churches with different denominations. So what happens now is that we offer grants. We have federal, county, and state funding. And so most of that funding, like we're a pass-through. So we pass through those funds. The churches will order from our online ordering system, and then that's how they get the food that they need. And we package it up, we ship it out. So the churches are those are our on the ground partners that are still doing this work every single day, nearly 300.
Okay, so you act as a supplier to these distribution places.
Correct.
Yeah, and in that 40,000 foot warehouse, I'm imagining a lot of it is probably refrigerated, right?
Yes. So we have a lot of dry storage, but we do have our cooler, which we're expanding, as well as our freezer space. So frozen proteins, it's coming up on Thanksgiving. So we're getting turkeys and oven roasters and hams and everything. So yes, we have both a freezer and a cooler that's in-house, and we're definitely expanding.
And how many people work there preparing the daily packages that go out into the field?
Feeding Westchester is a wonderful team of a little over 65 people. This includes warehouse staff, administrative staff, all under the same roof working together to get this done. It's a great team of people, great team.
So if someone walks into, I've been to the soup kitchen, and there's a couple of them I think in Mount Vernon, but I've been to one in particular I can remember. If individuals walk in there, they're going to get a 3 days worth of groceries and a couple of bags. What's in those bags? I'm just trying to understand, like, what are they picking up on a
Sure.
typical day?
So we, under Feeding America, we really, the goal is to not just provide food, but nutritious food, right? So our goal is really on produce and protein. So we're making sure that there are a variety of vegetables, produce, and fruits, right? We're really focusing on culturally relevant foods, but right now we're looking at definitely predominantly produce. So we,
So what's in the bag? What's in the bag?
Sure. You could have corn, avocado, you could have Scotch bonnet peppers the other day, tomatoes, anything that's seasonal, right? That's also important. You want to have seasonal because if it's seasonal, it's local, it's fresh. On top of that, you could have beans, you could have rice, grains, cereals, milks, think about quick breakfast food, something that you can have a meal. Frozen protein is hard to come by, but really also oftentimes we can do this as well. It just really depends on the donations for the month. But we always produce and protein definitely is a mixture within the bag.
Are there any goods that come through, like baby diapers, napkins, the paper towels, those kinds of things? Because that's a part of groceries. I mean, it's part of taking care of yourself. It's a part of cooking.
Absolutely. So we also have non-food. So to your point, feminine hygiene products, right? Laundry detergents. We get a lot of those things from our retail recovery partners. And so, yes, we have opportunities. We have toys. We also have birthday cakes, right? Because people who are food insecure, they need cake and they have birthdays and celebrations too. So we offer a lot of different things. But yes, non-food is definitely a part of it. And it's something that people don't think about.
You raised a point a little while ago about culturally relevant foods, because not all culturally relevant food is really good for you. It's full of grease and it's full of sugar. Now, is there any sort of nutritional advisory that comes with the food giveaway? Just telling people to.
That's a great question.
Yes, absolutely. So we have nutritionists on staff, and we have a program that we are a part of called JSY. So it's Just Say Yes. And oftentimes what we found is that, maybe you don't know how to cook something more healthy, right? So like maybe bok choy or maybe plantains or something. We provide on-site cooking demonstrations to give you another look at how you can actually make this food. Oftentimes people don't like brown rice, but we have nutritionists on site who are like, this is what you can do with your brown rice, your black beans, and this corn that I just got out of my bag. And we do those types of demonstrations. One, to provide nutrition and health, and two, just to open people's eyes up to like, even though you don't cook with bok choy, these are the wonderful things that you can do. You can use them in your recipes. And I think that's super helpful for people as well.
Can you share with our listeners and your listeners how Washington and the dysfunction in Washington is impacting your work and the recipients of your largesse?
Sure. So right now, and I'm very thankful that Washington extended the government shutdown about 45 days. So super helpful because, again, the majority of our food comes in through our federal government, so the USDA. And so I would say what we try to do is, and we've had a partnership with Feeding America and other food banks across the country. We go to Washington and we really advocate that they should not cut vital programs like SNAP and increase these things. Like, don't cut things like WIC, so women, infant, and children, and really focusing on, please do not cut. We want you to increase, but do not cut. But I think with the government shutdown, I think what's impactful is that things stop, right? So we want to make sure that we have all of our federal government commodities in-house so that we're able to continue to distribute. I think also the concern too is just if the government shutdown goes for a very long time, what does that mean for our neighbors? Well, we're ready to pivot and make shifts just in case these things happen, as are other food banks across the country and within this state.
We also do know that one party pushes for not just continuing these services, but expanding them. And the other one seems to be bottom line oriented. And for whatever reason, they're very difficult to reach. How do you reach these people?
Well, I was lucky to actually go to Washington with other food banks, and we flew into Washington, D.C., and we were able to meet with our congressmen. So we've met with all of our congressmen and women within that support and oversee Westchester County. So we're able to sit, make a stand, express how we're feeling, how our neighbors are feeling, giving them the same stats of, 94, like I think $94,000 really resonates with people for a family who's like, that's the bare minimum. And we really have been advocating for them. And we plan on going back again and again until they realize like this is important. It's not
So
just
you
a
met with
Republican or a Democrat.
you met with the Congress members who cover Westchester County, which means that you met with Lawler.
Bowman, we met
And
with
Lawler.
Jamal. Yep, and Lawler, correct.
And if I can just single him out, how did he respond? Because he votes pretty much along the conservative lines. And I don't know that that's helpful to Westchester when it comes to food issues.
So Congressman Lawler is I know he is focused on a hot food bill, so hot food within schools. And so I believe that we were received well. I believe that our numbers showed the issues within his district. I think we just had to bring it to light that it's a lot of seniors, it's a lot of children,
Right.
It's super important for them. And I think once we discussed that, I think people's eyes open. So all we can do is continue to advocate and do the work that we do.
So Lawler was on CNN this weekend, and this is not a pro-Lawler statement, but he said he didn't want a shutdown. He was against the shutdown.
Well,
Now-
he's in trouble locally. He may lose next year.
I don't see how any thinking person could in good conscience support a move toward a shutdown, because
And yet they have.
because one of the things that they're specifically saying will be impacted is SNAP. And you're telling me
Yes.
that if there are people relying on SNAP
survive.
27 days a month for survival, and 3 days a month, if they're lucky, they can get a couple of bags of groceries to cover them for a couple days a month through something like Feeding Westchester. I mean, and other sources. I know it's a big mixture, and not everybody's mixture is the same. But the notion that SNAP would be undermined by an outage, it's like barbaric, Peter. I really don't
Which is
understand.
why I asked about it.
I don't understand how anybody could possibly think that you could do that.
I mean, Ardina's in Yonkers, and
Right.
she knows from just by living in a city where so many people are on the edge. This is terribly frightening for anybody. But in a city like Yonkers or Mount Vernon or even my hometown of Portchester, frightening stuff.
Because if SNAP were to be undermined, if that thing had happened, this government shutdown had effectuated, and it could still happen 45 days from now, and SNAP was cut in addition to a bunch of other things,
Right.
demand would go soar. Tammy, you wouldn't be able to keep up with it. Demand would soar.
Charlie,
Right?
there is precedent to this. In a previous government shutdown, SNAP was impacted, but what happened was there was a sort of continuation of SNAP. So the program wasn't cut totally. Apparently, there was enough funding left within the SNAP reserve where people were able to access SNAP. This was some days after the government shutdown. I believe that was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was like 2019, I think.
Yes. Yes.
But, right. So, but there is a precedent for this. I'm not saying it's a total fail-safe agenda, but SNAP was able to continue even on a limited basis. The larger issue is that now you have 2 hotels in Westchester County that have a sizable migrant population. So if government support gets shut down, I mean, how are you going to feed these people in Ardsley? How are you going to feed the migrants at the Ramada Inn in Yonkers? How is that going to work?
So a couple of things. SNAP being cut it's connected to the Farm Bill. And that's something different than the government shutdown, which is something we're fighting against. Both government shutdown and the Farm Bill, we want them to increase. So over time, since the pandemic, we have our reduction in our TFAP and all of our federal government foods have decreased. We're just saying, stop decreasing it, increase it, and increase SNAP because we need all of this. But to answer your point, or to speak to your point about the asylum seekers that are in Ardsley, as well as White Plains and Yonkers and other locations, we are working locally because, as an example, in Ardsley, we have a wonderful partner, Dobbs Ferry Pantry, who has taken it upon themselves to really step up. And I appreciate all the work that they've done over the last few months to really support our Ardsley and those living in Ardsley. And so currently we want to take that lift off of our partner. And so Feeding Westchester is going to work with them, as well as those who are overseeing those 2 locations, to really help support that effort. So same thing, emergency bags, and really supporting. The needs are different than I would quote and say the regular Westchester County residents. We're providing one small service, but they need a full 360 degree of wraparound services, but we're just providing a small facet of it. But
So
all of our neighbors important, all of them. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So my understanding is that we had Ken Jenkins on the show fairly recently, I guess about a week ago, and he was saying that the number of migrants in Westchester was somewhere in the 400 range. Now, maybe it's gone up a little bit, but all of this is adding to the demand for your services, and you're saying that some of these folks needed an uplifted level of support because they have less to begin with. So all of this is to say Feeding Westchester, absolutely critical, a super important part of Westchester. Tami Wilson is the Chief Operating Officer of Feeding Westchester. We appreciate you coming on here today.
We need to have her come on
some light to this
sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, because I'm assuming that these are specific holidays that are your organization impacts people in a very, very profound way, because people do not like no one should go in the holidays or any other time, obviously,
Right.
without food. So are you willing to come on again
Absolutely.
between the holidays? Okay, great.
All right.
Absolutely.
Tammy,
Absolutely.
you are now officially a friend of the show. And
Thank you.
and that's
We don't have any T-shirts. Or
that's
anything.
yeah, but we will eventually, right?
I'll
We
still
will.
come. I have
We're
my
getting
own.
going.
I have
I
my
see
own.
that. I see
I
that.
have my own.
Tami Wilson, thank you for being our guest on 914 Wired. Don't go away. And that's it for today, folks. On behalf of our Dina Seward and Peter Moses and myself, thank you, everybody. You can hear this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We're kind of all over the place. And my monitors are wigging out right now. Tammy, thanks for being here. Thank you for being our guest.
Thanks for having me.